You see your input on the page, you've already learned where it comes from, where it lands. So you try a payload, nothing happens. You try another, still nothing. And at this point, feels like this should work, but it doesn't. So you start adjusting. Maybe you change the quotes, brackets, even the structure. You try event handlers, different variations. Still, nothing. And this is where it gets frustrating, because now you're not guessing blindly anymore. You're thinking, and it still doesn't work. Is the problem your payload, or is there something deeper controlling how your input is interpreted? At this point, folks, most people think, I just need something more advanced. But what if that's not the problem? What if you're not seeing the rules of the environment properly? Every time your input lands somewhere, it lands inside a context. That context defines what your input is, how it's interpreted, what it's allowed to become. That same input in a different context becomes something completely different. There are three main contexts that matter. HTML context. Here, your input is part of the page structure, so you can introduce elements. Attribute context. Now your input is just a string, so you need to break out of the quotes, create a new attribute. JavaScript context. Now your input is inside code, so you need to break out of the string, inject valid JavaScript. Now think back to what you were doing before. You were trying payloads without knowing which context you were even in. So sometimes it worked. Most of the time, however, it didn't. Not because the payload was wrong, but because it didn't match the rules. This is where the idea of escaping context comes in. Escaping means breaking out of the structure your input is trapped inside, so you can introduce new behavior, new interpretation, and execution. Let's make this very clear. Without escaping, your input stays confined. Nothing happens. With escaping, you change the structure. Now the browser sees something new. Now execution becomes possible. That's the difference. Now instead of asking, what payload should I try? You ask, what context am I in? What are the rules here? How do I break out of it? Now your approach becomes identify, escape, execute. Simple, right? Now everything connects. Alert is not the exploit. Sources and sinks show the path, and context defines the rules. And escaping context is how you gain control. Now the full picture looks like this. User input, source, processing, context, escape, sync, and execution. This is the system. Before this, XSS felt like guessing. After this, however, it becomes engineering. Failures stop being frustrating. They become signals. They tell you you're in the wrong context. You didn't escape correctly. You need a different structure. If there's one idea to carry forward, it's this. You don't get execution by trying harder. You get execution by understanding where you are and breaking out of it. If this made sense, you're right at the point where everything should be working. This is exactly where most people tend to stall because they don't know how to break out of the context that they're in. So they go back to guessing. Don't. I built a simple XSS execution kit that shows you exactly how to identify the context, escape it, and move toward execution. So you're not just trying payloads, you're controlling what happens. Grab it below.